measure only 3 meals per day, only from foods listed on the gray sheet without exception, um, one day at a time. And it is by God's grace that I'm abstinent today. And I call it into my sponsor. I don't eat anything in between. And it's the most important thing in my life today. And I'll tell you, the second most important thing now is my granddaughter, my daughter just called me and said she wanted to FaceTime me. So you know how important this program and you guys are to me, because I told her I couldn't. I said, oh, videotape her, because it has been the joy of my life. I'm not kidding. I was a stay-at-home mom, and when my kids left, I lost and couldn't find any kind of passion. But boy, this last 11 and a half months, she's going to be 1 year old on the 22nd. I have a renewed passion in life, and it is so great. Anyway, I was raised in alcoholic. I've seen many of you people, and you've heard my story, so I'll try and maybe can't make anything up. So it's going to be about the same. I was raised in an alcoholic home, and I was taught not to feel, and also not to look or touch below the neck. Don't ask me why. But the other thing is that food was worse than or being fat was worse than a mortal sin. And I got that message loud and clear. So when my mom came into my room on one night when I was getting ready for bed, she told me, she said, your dad and I have noticed you've gained some weight. You might try and watch it. Seems like a pretty, you know, non-judgmental, just not a big deal, but it devastated me. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. And immediately I started doing what I saw modeled in my family. And my dad was an alcoholic who had like 20 years of sobriety when he passed away, but he would gain like 5 or 10 pounds, and he would go on an austerity program, he called it. And basically he would not eat the things that we don't eat, and he always exercised. So I always was aware of that. That's what I did. I got up in the morning, I would exercise, and then I would have this drink that they used to have for breakfast. And then I would walk to school, which is probably a couple miles. And then I would have a minimal lunch, if anything. Then I would walk home from school, do some sort of exercise like tennis or some sort of sport. And then I would eat a minimal dinner and then exercise again that night. And so that was the beginning of 20 years of trying to do that. And it was pure hell. I couldn't stop eating. Every time I tried, I'd have some sort of parameters, like you can only eat this time, or you can only eat this kind of foods, or you have to eat this. And as soon as I broke that, and it could be one little piece of a vegetable or whatever, and then I was off and running. And I used to fluctuate between, I started out at 86. I was a lot shorter then, but at 86, which would have been way under, well, that's what I went down to. My first diet was 86. And then I went up to 180 was my top weight. And I used to fluctuate back and forth within the year, 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds. And I was powerless over that. I could not do it, no matter. Outgrowing clothes didn't matter. Not being able to be a cheerleader didn't matter. Having to wear the biggest skirt. There were all sorts of things that were consequences of my eating, but it didn't matter. It came first. So what happened was I ended up, well, in high school, I used to start a new diet at the beginning of a school year. When I went to college, I started a diet. I went over, studied abroad in Japan, only for the reason I signed up strictly so that I could lose weight. And I went over there and I did lose a weight. But as soon as I hit maintenance or started, I can remember coming up the subway steps and I saw an American thing that we don't eat, and I ate it, and I was off and running again. I was already gaining the weight back. I ended up going back to school early that semester, and I met a guy and we started dating, and I was still thin. But I started to gain the weight back during that semester. And I can remember going to different cafeterias. There was a South Quad and a North Quad, and I would eat at one and then go to the other one so that no one would see me eating at both of them. I was so ashamed of the way that I ate. I had no idea how to stop. And I just, the thoughts in my head about what I was were so were probably worse than anything anybody could have said. Although I was out running one day and a car of guys drove by and they go, "Hey, fat ass, you need to be running." And I was mortified. Here I was trying to do something good and lose weight. And then I get a comment like that. I probably went home and ate after that. I don't know. I had someone at the health club tell me when I decided not to join, she goes, "Well, I didn't think anyone like you would ever lose weight anyway." So it was embarrassing. I mean, the things that people say to you are terrible. And, I was taught you don't get the job, you don't get the man, you don't get the house, you don't get the kids, you never get the grandkids because you don't have all those things before you. You don't get the white picket fence. If you were fat, you were basically nothing. And I kind of outlived that. I didn't get a lot. Well, I shouldn't say that, because by eating, I was able to really accomplish a lot. If I was stressed or trying to get something and I got stressed out over trying to try out for something or whatever. In high school, I was a cheerleader. I had to wear the biggest skirt. I had to be matched with the biggest guy so that they could do mounts with us. And it was embarrassing, but it didn't matter. I couldn't stop. It just, well, you all know what powerlessness is. And unless you're an addict, it is, you cannot totally understand. I don't think my daughter didn't really understand. I have 3 children, and I tried to make food a non-issue, and all 3 of them turned out with different attitudes and ideas and different thoughts on weight and food. I have one son who unfortunately is one of us, but by the grace of God, he was able to find GreySheet a year and a half ago and now has over a year and a half of abstinence and has lost over 150 pounds. And it's just a miracle. I mean, to see that, I used to lay in bed with him. We'll lay in bed at night and he would come down and close our door and then go in the kitchen and start microwaving and cooking whatever he'd ate. And I would just, roll out of bed onto my knees and start praying, because I knew there was nothing I could do for him, because there was no one could ever do for me. And my dad, one time I was in grad school and he said he would come over and babysit me so that I wouldn't eat. And I looked at him like, I'm going to lie, cheat, and steal to get away from you. So, or kill, I would have killed him. So anyway, he also tried to bribe me with a watch one time, and I looked at him and I said, "I can't promise you that." He said, "If you don't eat this summer, I'll buy you that watch." And I said, "I can't promise that," because I knew by that time that I was totally powerless over that. So I went to college, I lost weight. I went to Japan, I lost weight. I graduated from college and I got a job at a great accounting firm in Denver, and I moved out there. And, before I really got up to 180 and totally towards the end of my eating, I was able to achieve anything. I was able to get the job. I didn't get the man because I totally didn't think that I would be able to. I just, I didn't think men were attracted to anybody that was fat. I always told my brothers, I said, married men and priests, I'm very comfortable with. And they laughed. They said, "Katie, it doesn't matter if married men or priests." I was so naive. I thought those guys don't cross the line, but maybe they do. I don't know. But there were just a lot of things that I was able to achieve, even though I was eating. But truth is, I would have given all those things up. I would have given up anything to be thin. And I did. I gave up a lot of things later on in my disease, and it just never helped. So after I went to Denver, I went to OA, and I knew that I was the same thing with food that my family was in AA. And they had all started going to AA. They had all started to go through treatment, and they were all getting sober. And I thought, I'm the same way, but I didn't drink. I didn't want to waste the calories. And I also saw the writing on the wall. I had had a couple incidences with alcohol that were less than wonderful. And so I said, I quit. And that was in 1980, the year after I graduated from college. And I've never had a drink since, but that was easy for me to give up. I don't think I had them. I might have shortly been able, or, push comes to shove, I was probably going to end up an alcoholic, but I was it just hadn't gotten to that far, because food had long since been the drug of my choice. And I always say that with tongue in cheek, because nobody chooses
10
to be an
minutes?
addict. I don't, 10 minutes? Oh my gosh, that goes fast. Okay, so I picked up a blue sheet because there were 3 colors, and that's the one I picked up. I lost my weight, but then I started binging as soon as I hit maintenance. I never know what to do when I hit maintenance. So anyway, I ended up once in high school, and then 4 times after I graduated from high school, I went through treatment centers for overeating. And I would spend 6 weeks in the hospital, and they were 12-step programs. So it was, they did go through powerlessness. I had made my amends. I'd done, 5 steps and 4 steps and everything that they told me to do. I even tried to carry the message, but, to me, it didn't have much of a message when you're still fat. So um, not that fat is, you can still be overweight or whatever and still be abstinent, but for me, it's kind of an oxymoron, because if I'm fat, I'm practicing my disease. So anyway, I called the last treatment center, and she said chronic relapsers have to do gray sheet. And that's when I started doing gray sheet. I don't know how I found that person, but I called her before and after every meal, and I made it through my day one. But for the grace of God, I've never looked back. That was my day one, and I've never had to go back to day one. And I hope and pray that I never have to go back to day one, because I don't know if I'd ever make it. I was suicidal at the end of my eating. I wanted to pull in my garage and just leave the car running, because I thought it would be painless. So I've been through a lot of no matter what's, and it's only because someone in this room has done it. And I say it because I'll go through this list, because anyone who's struggling with anything, you can get through anything, just like I've been able to, only because I've called someone else from this program and found out. I went through my mother's death, my brother's death. I went through infertility, I'm sure as a result of all the damage I did to my body from the starving and overexercising. I went through a pregnancy with twins. I was hospitalized for a month. I went through another pregnancy. I nursed all 3 of my kids for over a year, and, added the food and then had to subtract the food, which is hard for me. And parenting, one of the hardest things I've ever done. We've been through the ups and downs of owning a business. I've been on cruises with rocking boats, and I don't know why I didn't bring a non-digital scale. So I ate a lot of these little white things that I could count rather than have to weigh. So I've been on vacations, airline flights, trains, planes, automobiles. I've been to black tie affairs, and I've been on picnics. I survived our move to Texas, and I've survived numerous colonoscopies and surgeries. And this Wednesday, I'm going to have a gum graft surgery. And sure enough, I called someone on this meeting, incidentally, and asked her how she did it, because I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to eat only these certain foods that are not going to interfere with the stitches that they have to use. So, but I know that I can do it abstinently, because if anything happens, I'll just call my sponsor. And we all survived the coronavirus. I've been through several colonoscopies. I've been trips to foreign countries that have English speaking or non-English speaking people. I survived my son that I talked about earlier. I survived my braces. I survived my daughter's wedding, which was a big deal to go through. And when I made this list, it said soon to be a grandmother, but I'm surviving that. And I've had to call people who have had grandchildren and ask them how they do it. I had twins. How can I not remember how I ate the food with them being around me? Because they try and grab everything you have. And it's just, or if I try and get on a meeting, they want my earpiece, or they want my phone. So it's a new challenge for me. But, because I've been able to call people in the program like you guys, I've been able to do it. And it's not easy. I don't get a number 10 meal when I'm over there, and I have to eat it fast. I don't like that, because I fight the food with the food. And I do believe that that is really something that is important for me, because I need to know that I'm eating. I need to be aware of it. And that's why I sit down. I love to eat. My husband knows that. He just walked in and brought me something. I've had 2 surgeries to remove salivary glands. So when I talk
One
like this
minute?
so much, I get really a dry cotton mouth. So he brought that in, but he knows the big joke is, if only you looked at me like you look at your food. And it is so true. I do not look at my husband like I look at my food. And I heard a guy one time say to a lady at a grocery store, which would be me picking out my fruit, "Lady, you spend more time picking out those such and such than I spent picking out my wife." And I believe it, I would be there just, this is not, go like this, and which one's heavier. And anyway, I don't have to do that today. Um, there are some things that I've been able to give up, but not everything. I still, I still want something good, and it's okay. My sponsor tells me it's not a moral issue and I don't have to fight it. So anyway, I'll put my number in the chat, and thanks to all you people. Seriously, I have so much respect for every one of you who does this. It's not easy, but it is the easier, softer way for me. So I'm glad that I have it, and just grateful that I was able to find it. So thanks, everybody.